Okay, so I'm going to introduce we are. So today you have Quincy Jordan, myself, Andrea Floyd, and Dan Newman as your facilitators. Quincy was waving there for you on the camera. And we're looking forward to, we've been collaborating on several of these virtual community sessions. So we're looking forward to another great one today. On to the next one. So a little bit about AgileThought. We're all consultants here at AgileThought, and AgileThought certainly understands the world of a remote workforce and working together in a way that ensures that you have joint collaboration. We have approximately 3,000 consultants across most of the United States and the Americas, and we're in 6 countries at this time. And we were founded back in 2000, so 20 years of great efforts here. On to the next. We work in all spaces, so we're a one and done kind of shop. So if you need help just with a transformation or reinforcing some coaching and learning in an agile way, we have a transform practice. We also do custom software development in our build practice, and then we're there to support you in a run environment. So we're your one and done. So today we're doing what is called a practice talk. This is a format where we go into a little deeper on topics that we have gleaned as of things that are interesting for this community. And we've got a new event coming up on April 23rd. It's called a forum event, and it's basically going to be a conversation and discussion around agile anti-patterns. And then after the forum event, there'll be multiple practice talks to
Mason,
go into.
You need to find your headphones because you're going to need your headphones for.
Okay, there she goes. Okay, so we go into practice talks after the forum events, so we can go a little bit deeper in those topics that will actually hopefully help and touch your lives. So today, as we said, our topic is Kanban for work and home, and the flow of the conversation, this is going to be led by our one and only Dan Newman, is going to go over what a Kanban is, how to leverage this amazing framework in a new virtual work world, and then we're going to do it together. We're going to create a Kanban, and so you can lift and shift and take it away for home and or office work. So as Dan mentioned earlier, this is recorded so we can share it with others in this community. We'd like to always start off with a working agreement. So if at all possible, we invite you to turn on your cameras. It's great, as many of us now know, to see faces when we're not going into our offices. So that would be wonderful if you're comfortable. We'd like to make sure that the conversation is going to be dynamic, so just make sure we are respectful in our tone and words. Don't be shy. Please speak up. Take yourself off mute as appropriate. And there's a function that Quincy will be taking us through, how to raise your hand if you can't get a word in edgewise. But all in all, let's just share and work together today.
All right, so many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Zoom at this point. Just in case there are some of those who are not, on the Zoom toolbar, there is a mute button there, or a mute function. Just click on it and you'll mute yourself. Click on it again and you'll unmute yourself. Same with the video. And there are also some other options if you click on the up arrow there, where you can change your background and some other things if you need it to. And lastly, to the far right, there is a chat window. So as we're going through different aspects of today, we'll use the chat window, and I'll be monitoring the chat window to help out with Dan. So any input, any questions, anything like that, go ahead and put it in the chat window. And so as it goes in, you can see where you can, once you pull up the chat window, you can see where you can actually enter your chat, and you can decide if you want to send it to everyone or if you just wanted to send it to a specific person. That option is there. So, and then lastly, there is a raise your hand function. So there are times that if you have a question, you can literally click on the option there to raise your hand, and we'll do our best to make sure that we're paying attention to the raise your hand function, so that we'll say, hey, Dan, this person or that person, has a question. We may also do a physical raise your hand or thumbs up or something like that. If we do, then Dan will call that at the time, or one of us will do that on the fly. So I believe that is it, and we are going to move forward into Kanban for work and home.
All right. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Quincy. Yeah, one of the, obviously the big changes is we used to, well, at least most of us, I think, go somewhere different than the home for work, and then we would come home, and it was an opportunity to compartmentalize to some degree. We had the commute there and the commute back as a way to transition, and now we find ourselves in a place where worlds have collided, and what we want to do is share with you and invite you to participate in this conversation about Kanban for both this work and the home world. Now, Kanban is a very large topic that we could spend a lot of time on, and what we're going to do today is just kind of dip our toes in the Kanban waters, because I know for me, when I'm in a session that is way too much, way too fast, little water's okay, but you don't want to end up getting drowned in it. So if you consider yourself a Kanban expert, we'll still look forward to your contributions, but this is going to be really focused on enough Kanban that you can use it in your work and your home worlds colliding with each other. When I say there's a lot to Kanban, there are 9 values that ground the greater world of Kanban and the Kanban method. It has 4 principles that bind it all together. And then there are 6 practices and 7 cadences. So just doing a little math, there's 20 something items there. We're not going to cover them all. What we are going to focus in on is enough of the 6 practices that we're going to make you dangerous at home with your Kanban board and work items, and hopefully smooth out some of this interaction where you've had these 2 worlds bump into each other. So what are those 6 practices? We've got, kind of going around from the top left, then it will go clockwise. So visualizing the work, to me, is really the key to getting started. Just making the work transparent to all. Then around to the right, we limit how much work is in process. So we're not trying to do everything at once. We're trying to get some things done. Then we want to make our policies explicit, improve collaboratively and experimentally. And these darker blue items, they're ones that maybe apply more to your work. Then we have feedback loops and managing flow. And if you're sitting there going, oh my God, that's a lot of stuff and words, I feel you. What we're going to really focus in on today is these 3. So visualizing the work, limiting work in process, and implementing feedback loops. And I want to give you a little story from my life where Kanban kind of helped. And so if you'll entertain me. We have a house that's best described probably as a starter house, built in the 1920s up here in the northern Midwest. 1-car detached garage, 1 bathroom, a ribbon driveway, which is 2 strips of concrete where they have lawn in between. So it's kind of an unusual thing for a lot of parts of the country. And my wife said at one point, I think we should look to upgrade the house. We should get a new one. And I said, great. And in my mind, it was like, we'll put the for sale sign in the yard and we're done. Like, somebody will show up, give us money, we go get a new house. But then she shattered my illusion, because right after I said, great, it became this list of, well, we need to paint the door, put in a railing, we need to put in new carpet, we need to paint the garage, da, 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 da. And somewhere in there, I just tuned out because I was getting angry. I got to be honest. It was like the list was long. I don't like doing house projects. That list wasn't going to happen. And I was just overwhelmed by what I thought was, stick a yard sign in. And now it had become this massive, daunting list of stuff that I felt like was being put on me, even though that probably wasn't her intention. So we navigated this then. What I advocated for was, let's take the big list and we'll turn it into, of course, sticky notes, being an Agile coach. 1 thing per sticky note. And then I can work through that list and we can crinkle one up and throw it away if we need to. We can add to it, we can order it, but at least now I've got a tangible list of things, and it's no longer the cognitive load of trying to remember the big list of things that has emerged. So as you think back to that, the 6 activities, now we're starting to make the work visible. Thumbs up, makes sense? So, yeah, I see some head nods, awesome, thank you. Then the next step is, how are we actually going to complete the work? So I'm pretty good at doing one thing at a time. I'm not very good at doing 2, 3, or 4 things at a time. So our little Kanban board became something like, let's validate the approach, make sure my wife and I are on the same page with how we're going to do it. We can go to our big box home improvement store here. You know, maybe we pick up supplies for a couple things at a time, not too many, and then I will do one, and I will dutifully come back and then ask for what my next thing is. She gets to review it, and then we get to declare it done. So how are we going to put the railing in, get the supplies, do the railing, make sure it's good, and then we call it done. So now we've got our work items, the little blue things, and we've got a process that we can agree to for going through it. And so in its essence, this captures kind of 3 of those elements of Kanban, because I have my feedback loop over here. So let me ask folks, and you're invited to put this into chat, are there family-related work that you might want to visualize, either a category of work or specific items that you could see as I walk through this example? You're like, oh, I kind of see where I could have work items in a process to go through. So feel free to go ahead and put that into the chat, please. All right, I see job search, yes. Household chores, a wedding. Oh boy, planning a wedding right now probably sounds like it would be an interesting challenge. Kids' chores, paying bills, yes. 2 floods, oh my. Yes, an application process, good. So lots of different types of work. Ah, we've got another podcaster out there, Adam. Yes, so managing the podcast. Spring cleaning. So let me think, which one do we want to pull on? Quincy, Andrea, what jumps out to you?
Kind of interested to actually hear about the wedding. Like
I was going to say the wedding caught my attention.
That is a massive undertaking usually. So I wish I would have known about Kanban 20-some years ago when I was in that position. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to hear about that.
Now, how has that been done? Who wrote that?
So Megan, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
We used a Trello board, and we had a whole list of tasks that we needed to do. It was just, well, my then fiance and now my husband, but we put them all out there and had a to-do, doing, done, and then any follow-up tasks that we needed to follow up with. And we actually split our wedding into a small private ceremony and then a larger reception about 6 months later. So we kind of also had like further out tasks that needed to be completed. So we did a lot of those upfront tasks and then kind of further out along the line tasks. Somewhere in I may be able to actually pull up the board if you give me a minute, but that's how we planned our wedding. We didn't have a wedding planner.
It sounds like it turned out successfully because it went from fiance to husband. So great job.
You survived the planning process.
I would recommend it. I would not recommend the waiting 6 months between the ceremony and then the larger reception. I would recommend a shorter period, like a couple of hours, and doing it all in one weekend.
That's awesome.
But it was beautiful and wonderful. And the Kanban concepts and methodology worked really well for us.
Awesome.
We're both pretty visual, and keeping it all tracked in one place allowed us to keep notes and details and vendor information and links to things and pictures and all that stuff.
That's very cool.
Cool.
So it was great for us.
Awesome, thank you. And I was curious to pull on the other one, the kids application process for college. Renee, if you don't mind, I'm kind of curious about that, because that also seems like it would have many stages to it.
So I haven't implemented a Kanban board for it. I want to.
Okay, very cool.
So perhaps I misunderstood the question.
Oh no, that's it could be
that
aspirational
so cool.
as well as historic. No, that's cool. Yeah. Because there's things like, doing the evaluations of the different schools and,
where
I don't know,
campus
I can imagine
visits
different things,
and coaching and yes, all of.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll look forward to you later sketching that out and showing the camera.
Oh, sure.
No, aspirational's perfectly okay.
Hey, there's one other, Dan, that I'm a little interested in particular if it's contextualized into today, which is the kids events. Jim Wallace. So if that's contextualized within, COVID-19, dealing with things now, definitely interested to hear about that one.
Quincy, unfortunately it's not, but what I'm going to do is give an example of where I didn't have Kanban. My kids are both grown adults now, but they were at a stage where they were only 2 years apart, and they participated in school events as well as extracurricular events like volleyball practice, soccer practice, things like that. And it was a chore to get them in the right place at the right time with the right gear. And I didn't have Kanban. And one time we showed up, my wife took one kid, I took the other kid, and we showed up at the same place. Not thinking about where we needed to go. I was the one at fault, and I was in a hurry, and I did not have a Kanban board. If I did have a Kanban board, and my wife and I both used it, we probably would not have had that problem occur. Fortunately, we were close enough together to where I was only a few minutes late instead of an hour late. But anyway, that's where I felt they had a Kanban board. Looking back, I said, wow, I wish I would have had a Kanban board back then. It would have been a lot easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. We only had one child, so that made some of those logistics way easier. So thank you all for sharing on the chat and then verbally. So another way then to go beyond just a bunch of different work items is to start then grouping these into what are called work item types in Kanban. So email may be one type of work. Yard work might be another. There might be inside work or outside work, planned versus unplanned work, or those things that might be considered projects versus a just do it type of activity. So, taking the trash, recycling, and yard waste out is not a particularly daunting task. It's just, it happens and it's done. Whereas some of these things might turn into more project-based work, oh gosh, I think getting the bathroom remodeled would fit into the project-based work because there's a lot of different activities that go into that. And as you're thinking about the world of Kanban and how the work flows through, then you can use these different types of work to categorize how you're going to respond to them. So I'm curious, and we'll do this in chat here again. What work item types come to mind for you? So these would be ways of grouping together a bunch of work items and saying, we treat these things similarly to each other. I think I see typing. I'm not sure if I see confusion about the question.
This is Renee. I'm a little confused, so
okay. No, that's fair. Good. No, thank you. Yeah, glad to. So for me, things that involve the outside are typically pretty straightforward. mowing the lawn, taking the trash out, dealing with the pond. Those are pretty simple things, and I can treat those all similarly. Things that might involve bigger indoor remodel projects might get treated differently. Dealing with client-related work gets treated differently. So it's trying to take some of these things that we have to do and saying these are the ways we treat them. These are things we treat similarly. So I see TW put in a comment, things that require orders. Okay. Quincy says his work travel expenses. So those travel, the administrivia of doing work. Yep, so internal things like, oh, I see, garage cleaning and ordering shelves. So maybe the next slide will help make it a little more concrete, at least what I'm thinking. So we've got, oh yeah, creating reports and data analytics. Yep, those might be done similarly. And the reason I ask about work item types, and I appreciate that it can be a little tricky to wrap one's brain around, as we start to combine our work and home boards, I might have a document to draft for a client. I host a podcast, the Agile Coaches Corner, so creating episodes for those is something that I have to do. A few years back, I would have been responsible for, let's say, picking up a child's medication. Oops, so I skipped into adding colors, but the client-related work might get treated one way, the household-related work might get treated another way, the just to do it might get treated another way, and so you can think of those as work item types. Does that maybe help? Okay, I see some head nod. Okay. So if we combine our work and home, one of the challenges then is to make it obvious what type of work is what. Kanban advocates for making things visual. And so in this case, we might use some colors, let's say, to make it obvious what my client work is, which would be the green stuff, the homework, which is the blue stuff. And then we've introduced a new color here. So pick up the child's medication. If I treated this board as first in, first out, I just kind of work my way through here, and whenever I got to this card, it would get delivered. That's probably not a terribly good way to go about life. You definitely don't want the kids' medication waiting until I'm done with landscaping the yard. And so the Kanban way of referring to that would be a class of service. So there are things that get treated differently than other ones. They get a higher class of service. You can think of it like if people travel a lot, maybe they get on Delta's elite list. They're gold, silver, diamond, platinum. There are different ranks of things. You see that at hotels. You see that with, heck, even I think different fast food places now have different ways of doing class of service. So it's just a way of saying this thing gets treated differently. And then from a Kanban board perspective, what I would do is I'd go ahead and make a place for that. So by a place, we'd create a swim lane, because now it helps me visualize what types of things get expedited, like picking up medication, and which things maybe fall into a normal class of service or a normal swim lane. So I want to check on that concept. So you've got two concepts, there are really three. You've got different types of work, and then you've got a class of service, the way you treat the work, and then reflecting that onto a board so that it's really obvious what things maybe get expedited, which things get hurried, and which things are kind of a normal class of service. So I'm gonna check and see if people have a reflection, or has anybody used a swim lanes to effect in their Kanban world for those that have used it? Oh, yes, in the same way, Malia. Okay, in the same way being with expedite versus normal class of service. Oh, and you're invited to unmute and answer verbally.
Too much.
I'm sorry?
My dog barks too much.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. But thank you. So yeah, so expedite and normal. Okay.
This is Brian. I've got a question.
Yeah.
How does, in this kind of scenario, do you have a whip for, a whip limit for each lane? Is that what you're? Okay.
Great question. Yeah, my work in process limits went way up here, but you could, yes. So for instance, hopefully you're only managing one crisis at a time, maybe two if it's a particularly chaotic household. You could certainly do that. You could implement a normal lane work in process limit. So maybe you only have 3 things that are between to do and done, or whatever number works for you. There's not a prescription for what that work in process limit should be. But that's where you get into the experimenting and evolving over time. Like for me, it was the doing one thing at a time was a big deal for me. It really helped things flow through.
When you're using this expedited lane, do you put any kind of criteria around, what goes in that expedited lane, this has a time criteria on it, or, a sense of urgency, anything like that?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And I'm going to slide back a little bit to this slide. Back up one more. So yeah, in a house, it would be interesting to get some feedback on what policies might look like. In the Kanban world, make the policies explicit. One of the challenges with a lot of work situations is we'll blame managers. Managers might come in and tap people on the Scrum team on the shoulder and say, oh, hey, I really need you to do this thing right now. And if there isn't clarity about what truly constitutes an emergency and to put everything down, it becomes a problem. And so thinking of which things really, in a household situation or where work and home combined, we drop everything and respond to it, can be valuable. I was separating frozen hamburger patties with a knife. The way not to do it is to hold the patties this way and use the knife that way. And so at the point where there was blood flowing onto the floor, it was clearly an emergency, and there was not debate about whether things should get put down and I should go get a couple stitches. There are less obvious situations, and just being really clear about what types of things need to have other things dropped for them can be super valuable. Yeah. And your house will have different criteria for what's an emergency than mine will, and that's okay.
Hey, and Dan, Jim shared that he also has used swim lanes to display waiting on the external actions, which is a good one.
Oh, good. Yeah, things that you can't move forward with because you're blocked or impeded or in a wait state in some way. Perfect. Yes. Other ideas that you could have, you might have a swim lane for different family members potentially. And actually we'll go into separating boards. So one way to do this, I might have my board, my wife might have her board, children might have their board. So that's an option that you might choose to look at. And then, like I said, I can't have other people necessarily do my work at AgileThought, although that's really an interesting idea. When I say that out loud, we could kind of swarm around that and see what we could do. But like the yard work, any of the 3 of us could be capable of taking the trash out, of mowing the lawn. And so we might have a common backlog of things that then gets fed into these different boards for each family member.
Hey, Dan, so we have a question from Jim about do you move things between those 3 boards?
Do you move things between the 3 boards? Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Jim? What's maybe an example?
Yes, you said you had a kid, your kids may have a board, your wife may have a board, you may have a board. Something that you take on your board, if you're backed up with something else, can't one of the kids or your wife pull it over to their board and do, or do you move it to, you see that they're kind of lax and they could do whatever you have lined up for yourself. Do you freely move it, or is there a negotiation that must take place?
I will take the approach. One of the the things I love about Kanban, it says, hey, just start where you are, and whatever you do, you make it visible. And so I would say, if the work in your house would flow that way, like here's a thing, move it, etc., that becomes an implicit or an explicit policy. You know, I can pick up that thing and take care of it. There are things that I would not move. Me personally, like my child had to submit his FAFSA form for college. Just kind of the principle of the thing. I wasn't going to do it for him, right? I mean, it's a valuable life lesson in my opinion, and so that was something that would stay with him as his responsibility. And you know, if there's unfortunate consequences, well, that's another life lesson. So, but yeah, if you're like, hey, you know what, I see you're busy, I could take that on, or I see that you're stuck with it, I could take that. I love that. Yeah, kind of the self-organizing that we would advocate for on any well-functioning team makes a lot of sense in a family situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, as long as you're not going to get accused of, quote, taking something over from the other party.
Dictator dad.
Yes. The command and control household, yes. No, that's an excellent. And you might, where I transitioned from the last slide to this slide, you may have swim lanes for family members as another option versus running truly separate boards as well. So it's a matter of playing with these things and experimenting and seeing what's going to work best for you in your situation.
And I think that's actually a good point, you know, as well, Dan. You know, when I think about some of the differences between like Scrum and Kanban and so forth, and you know, within the Kanban space, there's so much more flexibility, which, you know, sometimes can go too far if you don't, you know, watch it. But there's so much more flexibility with how, you know, you can, you know, arrange your board and, you know, have the multiple boards if you want to, have the multiple swim lanes if you want to. And, you know, maintaining, you know, some of those, you know, values and principles and so forth, just as far as, you know, watching, you know, your WIP limits and making things visual. Like as long as those things are still there, you know, it's very flexible, very good, very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the two-edged sword of Kanban. It's a blessing and a curse. So with the Scrum framework, it's prescriptive about roles, events, and artifacts. Mm-hmm. Within that, you have a lot of latitude, but if you're not doing those handful of things, you're not doing Scrum.
Yeah.
And Kanban says, hey, where are you now? Start there, make it visible, and improve over time. And he said that's a blessing and a curse. It's great if you improve over time. If you're not improving over time, then it's you're probably not doing Kanban. But much like I would say, you wouldn't be doing Scrum without a Scrum master. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any other kind of questions? I see. What is
a question?
What is lead time? Okay, lead time. And I'm curious, I might be curious for a little bit more context, but I'll give the kind of the text answer. Lead time would be the time from something enters the queue. So from the time, let's say, I'll pick on my wife. From the time my wife says, take out the trash, or asks me to take out the trash, you know, because we're not really a command and control household, to the point where that trash is actually taken out. So I can honestly say redoing the sunroom, the lead time on that has probably been about 5 years at this point. It's not done. It isn't even started. So you can measure lead time from the time something either enters the queue. Well, lead time would be from the time it enters the queue till it's done. So, oh, good, a couple more questions. And the reason I hesitated, there's another concept of a commitment point. Which is from the time I actually commit that I'm going to do something until it gets done. So I haven't actually committed that the sunroom will get done. It's just a notion that sits in the backlog. But if it ends up in this to-do column, then it would be a commitment, and it will arrive in the done column. So that's a good question on lead time.
So there's a follow-up question to that about, is that the only way to measure progress?
Good question. Mercifully, no, again, given my sunroom example. So a couple different ways of measuring progress is cycle time, which would be the time from something starts until it's done. And then throughput would be the other type of measure. So how many items per unit of time get done? So in our household, maybe we have, let's see, 5 items delivered on average per week. So those would be a couple ways of measuring the flow of work through the system. And then that's another one of those areas where kind of the metrics and looking at systems thinking and how to remove bottlenecks, that really gets into some deep Kanban exploration, and would be probably a topic for another day.
Well, maybe a little bit along those lines. You have another question around walking the board, and that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's a great one, and so related then to the next question below that, which is where do you put these? Kanban, do you put it into an Excel spreadsheet? Trello was mentioned for one of our more tech-savvy families. I think if it were in a Trello board in my household, nothing would ever get looked at there. But a something hanging on the refrigerator, we all eat, that's going to get seen on a periodic basis. So that would be a physical board in a location like that would work better for my household. And then I know some families kind of do a let's walk the board, a daily stand-up, or a short event of daily coordination. Here's what I'm planning to do today. What are you working on? Do you need some help? What's moving? What's stuck? Remember, we have the FAFSA deadline coming up. Those types of things. Really nice way to stay coordinated. Potentially I need the house quiet between noon and 1 if I'm doing a meeting online with a bunch of folks. Those might be good things to cover as part of a daily walking the board for sure. All right, good questions. Yeah, and I feel like a little bit of the consultant, it depends, but yeah, if Excel works for you, great. Physical board might work for you, that's awesome. There are apps for that, of course.
Yeah, by and large, wherever you're going to see it, right? Wherever it's going to be visible for you.
For sure, for sure. So I want to bump ahead. I know the examples I shared so far were just a card with an activity on it. So another option that you can do is really decorate your card with information that would be valuable. So a due date, taxes, college applications, recurring Thursday, get the trashes out. You might have a particular stakeholder. So mom, dad, or kid might really be counting on something happening at a particular time. Your child's sporting event that was mentioned, they are the stakeholder in getting to t-ball or baseball or soccer or whatever event on time. And then who's taking on the responsibility for delivery? So the stakeholder might be responsible for validating that homework is done, even though the child hopefully is going to be responsible for doing their own homework by a particular date. So put the information on the card that can help you make decisions and help that card then get to done. Any questions on decorating cards? It's another one of those, the world is your oyster as far as what you might put on there. Any ideas for what you might put on that you want to share? Here's where we're going to give you a chance to sketch out a board. We had an email reminder go out about an hour before this, and hopefully that was either enough lead time or you have one handy now. But we're going to invite you, if you simply have a little bit of paper, I've got my 5x8 cards or 4x8 or whatever these are, and a pen, and invite you to sketch out a board. You can consider having what columns might be appropriate, any swim lanes you might want to identify, any work in process limits. So kind of think about what a board might look like for how you operate. And then also think about and sketch out a couple work items on there. So whether it's personal, work, or both types of items, sketch those out in any kind of decoration you might have. So what information would be valuable for making decisions when you look at that board? And then we'll invite you to share with the camera and talk about that in just a couple minutes.
Hey Dan, while that's happening and everyone's working on that, could you maybe just talk a little bit about in a work setting or even in a family setting, like who would help put this board together and decide these swim lanes and so forth.
Yeah, I'll touch on it briefly and then kind of make sure that we give people some time for any silent silent work, since I know I have a hard time sketching and listening at the same time.
We can wait. We can wait.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, we'll hold on to that, and maybe some ideas will come out from the crew too. Give you a couple minutes of awkward silence.
So Dan, there's a question from Megan on whether or not she can share her Trello. Oh, you saw it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I see some eyes are down and people are still sketching, so give about 60 more seconds. All right, so let's see what kind of things people came up with. So we did an experiment earlier, and we believe if people kind of hold up the card to the camera, we should be able to see it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my board for now, because I think that will allow us. And then when somebody wants to, let's see, Jim, do you want to share? I think I can spotlight your video, and I think that makes everybody see it.
Okay. Faint. I should have used a Sharpie. I just have a simple one. I have a to-do board or to-do in progress. Accepted and done. And then I talked about my weight swim lane. I'm getting here in North Carolina, is getting pretty enough to do stuff outside. And I set out to do a vegetable garden and do some mulching and things like that. So my to-do board has on there, and I'm having trouble seeing it on the screen, mulch backyard. Well, I ordered the mulch, I'm waiting on the delivery. And so the next thing I started doing was building a vegetable garden out of some 2x6s. I'm working on that right now. And, once I finish that, I'll call my better half and say, is that acceptable? And if she says yes, I'll mark it as done and start putting the dirt. I already have the dirt that was carried over from last year. And so anyway, as things finish, I just move them over, and I can put this up on my refrigerator and apprise my general manager, who also the financial CFO, and she can keep up to date and answer questions from time to time if she doesn't want to look outside.
I love it. I love it. I was going to ask who your stakeholder was that was accepting your work, and you answered that one. Awesome.
Answered the question.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Who else has a board they want? And out of curiosity, when I spotlighted Jim, did other people see that kind of come up front and center? Okay, good. Learning
Nice
more about
feature.
Zoom every day. It is.
Next time I'll use a mark or a Sharpie.
Oh, it's all good. Let's see, in chat, I think Megan, was it? You were saying share Trello or create a new one, or anyone else have something to want to share? Don't be bashful.
Megan, are you on mute? I see lips moving.
Yeah. Usually I'm on mute, yeah. Am I still on mute?
No, you're
No,
good.
we can hear you.
I wasn't sure if you
okay.
had a board to show.
Okay, well, I can send you guys the link to my Trello board, but I also made one. It's very similar to Jim's. We don't live very far from each other in North Carolina. But I made, this is just a kind of a yard work board. But
it's coming through great. Yep.
Trying to see what I wrote. So kind of similar to, to do, doing, and done. It's getting close to time when we can, do containers. We just bought our house in the fall. So it's my first year planting containers. So that's something that's kind of still in the to-do stage. Mowing the grass, that's something we do kind of every week. So it's back in the to-do column. We have a nice secret ivy garden that's beautiful, but also is strangling our camellia bushes. So we're in the process of removing that. And then this one, so once we get that ivy removed, we'll mulch around it so that hopefully the ivy doesn't come back. And then we have about 40 azalea bushes around the house. So those will need to be pruned once they're done. In the process of moving some pavers around. And then we did have some creaky trees that were rotten. So we have already removed those. So that is in the done column. And then in the future, we have an empty lot next door that we would like to purchase and then clear out a little bit. And then I think there's something we need to also this weekend stake the trees back where they're getting a little top heavy and they're doing kind of like this thing.
Awesome.
So there's this one.
That's wonderful.
That's what I made.
Yeah, and these don't have to be incredible. Thank you. Yeah, and these don't have to be incredibly sophisticated lists. Like you're saying, Jim's had, I think, an approval column in it that was added. Megan's to-do, doing, done. It's a matter of finding something that suits your needs. So I want to be conscious of our time here. We'll flip back to here. We touched briefly on where that would go, electronic or a refrigerator somewhere on the wall. So put it somewhere where people can see it and take action with it, I think would be the key. If it's somewhere where it's not getting engaged with, it's not serving its purpose. I want to take a brief kind of step back. So a lot of tactical things about the boards, the work items, the work item types, swim lanes, classes of service, but taking a little step back, one of the things that makes Kanban a very approachable technique is you're starting with what you do now, and then you're agreeing to pursue incremental and evolutionary change. In the workplace, then we aren't putting in new roles, new processes, new responsibilities, and that's also true of in your household. We're saying, hey, based on what we do now, let's make it visible. And then anybody can bring ideas to continuously improve to it after that. And we touched on a number of the 6 practices as we went through. And AgileThought has a Kanban Essentials course, which is a full day with a lot of activities to really help ingrain this with what individual teams do, how you can make it work for kind of the heavy lifting of actual work that goes deeper into kind of the 4 principles, the 6 practices, and different cadences of improvement, things like that. So hopefully when we're done, we will have succeeded in just kind of sticking our toes in those waters today. So with that, Andrea, I want to hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, thank you all for joining today, and just to refresh, one-stop shop. If you know something piqued your interest here, as Dan shared, there's a lot more in Kanban. So if there's something we can help you with, please reach out to us. And on to the next one. Below you'll see our emails. It's real simple. Our first dot last name at AgileThought. So looking forward to connecting with others. So thank you again for attending. And as a wrap up, just wanted to share with you some upcoming events. We have Resolving Agile Anti-Patterns specifically around remote working. That's our next topic, and that'll be on April 23rd, as well as the next one after that is Fun Retrospective Ideas for Remote Teams. And then after that, Effective Sprint Planning with Remote Teams on May 7th. All of those are going to be sent to you via an email after the conclusion, along with your party gift today, which is going to be a PDF of today's presentation and content. But what we would really love to have you do for us is to look over in your chat window, and Quincy has put out a link to a retro board, and it helps us get topics that may be of interest for you, also make adjustments if there were some ways we could change how we're presenting this information and engaging with you. So if you don't mind, as a gift to us, please click on that link and give us some feedback. We really value it.
Yes, please. We'll leave that up there for folks to capture that URL, and really want to thank folks for their time, and look forward to seeing you again at one of those future events. We'll leave the call open for a little bit, but thank you.
Thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so
Enjoy
much.
your day.
Thank you.